Okay, everybody, welcome to Transactions 101. So for today, we're going to talk about the seller side of a transaction. We're going to go from this series this month is going to go over from the beginning of the transaction all the way to close of escrow to when you're going to pick up your check. Last time I did my Listings 101 class, it covered all the way from getting leads to gathering the listing contract and getting it signed. So in this class, we are going to assume that we've already been listed and we already got an offer on the property, okay? So more importantly, we're gonna go over the disclosures that you need to get signed during the listing portion and during the start of your transaction. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in really quick and then we will get started. All right. So when you log into your zip form, you're going to have all of your transactions show up. And for this case, we're going to use my test transaction just to keep people's information private. And see if I can do this really fast, so I can hide the information. If you have questions, you can ask questions. You don't have to. Yes, you can ask me questions. I don't think you can really hear it on YouTube when I do it, but test client. It'll start. It'll be there. If it's not there, then at least you guys benefit. Okay, so this is your transaction details. So you have all of your documents. You have your parties that are involved. So in your documents for right now, I've already preloaded all of the disclosures that are needed for the actual transaction. If you don't use a transaction coordinator, I strongly recommend it. Paula is great, and she has a great method to how she handles the transaction, and it really helps me get more listings this way. So if you don't use a TC, I recommend it. But for this class, I'm going to assume we don't, and I'm going to go over everything with you. So,
John,
yes.
today I did a listing,
Uh-huh.
and it archived it all. It gave me almost all the disclosures I was supposed to have, the SBQ, the TDS, and all that.
Yeah, see, like on my archive, I have no documents to display, but you can add the documents to your archive if you wanted to.
But it came up like that, so I don't know how.
Huh, interesting. Maybe it was from a previous transaction? I'm not sure. No?
It was a brand new listing,
Oh, okay. That's weird.
and it said, I put down listing and then all.
All right. Well, that's interesting. So you have your listing agreement, which of course was already signed, and let's say you've received the offer in your email and you went over the offer, and let's say, so for this case, my listing price I believe was $325,500. Yeah, $325,500 I think. Yep. So let's say you got the offer and the offer came in for $320,000 and your seller is accepting the offer and we're going that route, okay? So you have generally, when you receive an offer in your email, and I'll show it to you guys after I stop recording because of privacy, but when you receive the offer in your email, you want to obviously make sure you review the offer with the client. So when I review an offer with the client, I always review all the details. I review listing price, or excuse me, purchase price. I review all costs and I bring them a net sheet so they can see what their bottom line is after the transaction is complete. That way they know what they're going to profit after it's all said and done. And generally what I'll do is I'll have that come from escrow directly so they can actually give me a more accurate number directly from their fees. So once the offer is accepted and the seller has signed the offer for acceptance, what I'm going to do is I generally will send an email to escrow, and this is my format. This is how I do it every single time. So what I'll do is I will do new escrow in the subject, and I will include the property address, Main Street, let's just say it's in Barstow, and then what I'll do is I will say, I will say hello. Generally, it'll be Amy and Tony, and I'll say please please open escrow on the property referenced above, attaches the fully executed contract. If there is I'll let them know exactly what's attached. And this is from previous experience from other escrow companies that email you back and ask you what do you have attached, or where's the counter, or where's this, where's that. So I've made my email template for what helps me because I'm very detailed. So generally I'll let them know, hey, there's a fully executed contract. If there is a counter, it'll say including counter. Now let's say you've gone back and forth. So what I will do is I will say including SCO1, BCO1, and SCO2. Now if it is a trust, then I will say this is a trust sale, and so on and so forth. So I always give all the details. I give the seller contact, and sometimes I won't, because in here I have your listing agent, which is yourself. If there's a co-agent, you can put co-listing agent, listing agent TC. So I'll put the phone number and email. The office phone number will generally be the phone number I put here. The selling agent, I put the lender in there, I'll put escrow in there, and I'll put title in there. The reason why I do all of that is because I want everyone to be on the same page with who's involved in this transaction. Because oftentimes you'll send your escrow company just, escrow to be whoever, and that's it. And then they'll say, well, who's the lender on this? And they'll say, well, who do you want for title on this? So I just include everyone in there, and I will copy everyone in my list. I'll email this to everybody, and I'll say, hello all, here it is. Let's open escrow and let's get this done. And then generally what I will do is under the commission part of it, I will say, this is a, let's say 30-day escrow. Another thing I'll do is I'll say this is an HOA, or this is a HOA, or this has solar. So I want to always point out those obvious things, because I feel that if escrow doesn't get it done right away, it won't get done. And a lot of times I don't want to wait until the last minute for like solar transfers to get done, HOA transfers to get done. So if they can jump on it right away, then that will help with the process of the transaction.
So you were saying this is like a template you have in your email?
It's just my template, yep.
How, is that another class on how to save a template like that?
I don't save the template. What I do is I'll search new escrow, and I'll just take the information from the previous escrow, and I'll just delete the people involved. Or usually it's just the selling agent and the lender I delete, and I'll add the new agent and the new lender. And then I usually, like the template of, hello, Amy and Tony, please open escrow on the following property. Attached is, I'll just delete and remove, and add what needs to be added from there. I'll change commission, obviously, if the commission is different. But I copy it from every transaction I open. That way it's the same and it's easy, If you guys want to see this, this is what Paula uses as her checklist for all her documents. So in the beginning, when I do my, I know it's small, I'm sorry. I can barely see that too, so it's okay. In the beginning, when I do my listing, I think I talked about this last time, so since some of you weren't here, what I do in the very beginning when I get my listing contract signed, I generally will do the seller property questionnaire and the transfer disclosure statement. I'll try to get those done like same day, because that's your questionnaires for your house.
And the RTD needs an affidavit.
If they,
The RTD, the TDS needs a affidavit.
Yeah, so if I don't get those done, then I generally, what I'll do is I'll wait for Paula to put the disclosures in my folder, and then I'll print them all out and I'll go and get them done. Or if the seller is comfortable, I will do everything through eSign. So if I can't do my AVID at the time of listing, then I'll write notes down, I'll fill it out and have them eSign it. Do you guys know who knows, Brian, you don't know all the disclosures, right? You don't know them all? You don't know them, no, do you know them all? No, right? You're new too? You? Okay. So I'm going to go over them. So your agent visual disclosure, this is the actual, your actual visual inspection. So as an agent, when you go to a listing appointment or you go to a home, even if you're representing a buyer, you are required to do a visual inspection of that property. So what that means is it's just a simple a visual inspection. You are not a home inspector, so you are not required to go in crawl spaces in the attic to check the attic. You're not required to do any of that. You're just doing a visual inspection of the home, so you can notate things like, you know, carpet is dirty, house needs cleaning, 2 holes in bedroom 1 in wall, you know, kind of thing, or, you know, faucet missing in the kitchen, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but it says not to open cupboards.
Correct. I don't open cupboards.
Do you pretty much suspect that there's some serious water damage?
You can say water damage suspected, advise counseling home inspector.
Okay.
Remember, you're not a home inspector, so it's not your job to go looking for stuff. That's the home inspector's job. So in this case, inspection performed by, so it's going to be Keller Williams Victor Valley. I'm just going to put VV for this. All right, so the seller will initial it, then you go through and you put what you find. So let's say the entry of the house is, so you could say something like front door frame has exposed wood, needs painting. Okay, living room needs, cleaning. Dining room, let's say it's just, I don't know, let's say the stained carpet.
Some agents put in there things that have been changed, like the tile or like a.
Yeah, so like, so for example, in the kitchen, let's say they've updated the kitchen, you can say newly updated kitchen, you know, backsplash, you know, etc. I'm just doing it for this, but so you go through and you do your bedroom 1, bedroom 2, bedroom 3. If there's other bedrooms, you can go bedroom 4, you know, and 5, you know, okay, you know, kind of thing. And then same thing with your garage, exterior. Yes, no, please ask.
So you do this after you've got an offer on the property, or you do this
No,
before you?
I do this at the time of listing if I can, or if let's say they sign the listing agreement and they don't have time to sign everything, and you don't do it at the time of listing for whatever reason, then what I will do is I will have all my disclosures loaded, because now Brian or Paula will load the disclosures right away in your zip form if you use them. And once you do that, then I'll generally, let's say the client can't e-sign, I'll print them out and I'll go get them signed, including this, or I will have them all e-sign everything if they know how to check box the disclosures, and I'll go over that a little bit more in detail. But these are at time of listing, so you want to make sure that you're avid and those questionnaires are done before you get an offer, because if you get an offer and you open escrow, you're not supposed to get those questionnaires done at that time, because in theory the buyer could actually request those up front, because they are for the buyer, they're not for the seller. So yeah, and then you sign it, and so this one is complete, and our seller's name is Stinky Pete. That was my Stinky Pete. Yeah, so that's that one. Okay, then your other one you want to do up front is your seller property questionnaire. This one and the transfer disclosure statement are the two most important ones in my opinion, because this has things like within the last 3 years, the death of an occupant on the property, upon the property. So if mom or dad or grandpa passed away on the property and they're selling it, you want to know that. That's important. An order from a government health official identifying the property as being contaminated by methamphetamine. The only one that is not on here that I think they need to start adding is, has the property been used to grow marijuana? Not to be funny about it, but there's a lot of houses that are used as grow houses, and that question is not in here. So generally what I will do is if it says repairs and alterations, so let's say, because it says any alterations, modifications, replacements, improvements, remodel, or material repairs on the property, including those from a home warranty claim. If they say no, generally what I will ask is, has this home been used to grow marijuana? Especially if I feel that it has, then I always ask. I always try to ask that question. I don't pick and choose who I ask it to because that question is not on here, and you're legally allowed to grow up to 9 plants in your home in certain areas. So why am I not asking this question? Because if I...
Buy in your own home too, but the next person that buys it should have the right to know.
Yeah, exactly. So that is your choice. I ask if they grow, but you don't have to. So it's not on here specifically. Like I said, it's just something I do because it's been more and more apparent. And especially, let's say you do your visual inspection and you go and you see mold in the eaves out front and around the house. Well, you can write down mold around eaves because there is an exterior section on there. So what I generally do when I've seen that in the past is I'll ask the seller, hey, this is mold up here. Have you had a roof leak? And they'll say no. And I'll say, okay, well, have you grown marijuana here? And if they say no, that's on them. You can't press them. But I did have one transaction where the client said no and then changed it and said yes because I pointed out that that is not from a roof leak. So they said, well, we grew marijuana only in the garage. Well, come to find out, they grew marijuana everywhere because it was all over the attic. So you have to be very upfront and let them know, I'm protecting you as a seller, because if you say no and it comes back to be yes, you can be liable for this stuff. So that's what you want to make sure there. So just like for water intrusion, it just says water intrusion into any part of any physical structure on the property, leaks from or in any appliance, pipe, slab, so on and so forth. So this is for your client to fill out. I do not, and I stress, do not recommend that you guide them. I mean, they'll ask you a question, like they'll say, what does it mean? What is, I don't know, let's see, any problem with infestation of mold, mildew, fungus? That's pretty straightforward, but they will ask you questions like,
If you're by
let's say,
reform school,
yeah, so let's say any PACE, lean, or hero, or if the client doesn't know what that is, and then they ask you what is that, and you can say, well, this is what it is, and no, you don't have it unless you've done a hero program for your roof, for solar, and so on, for windows. But what you should not and cannot do is say, any defects in the following. If you know that the client had let's say a water leak or had the roof fixed, you don't want to guide them to say no if there was something that was fixed on the roof. You want to make sure that they are clear and cut and transparent on what they're putting on their disclosure, because that protects them and you. So very important there. And then again, once this is all filled out and signed, then they will go into your file, and Stinky Pete can sign it. And once the client signs it, they are acknowledging that everything that has been filled out on this form is transparent and true to the property. Okay? So like things like whether the property is historically designated or falls within an existing or proposed historic district. We don't have that up here, but there are areas like in LA and San Diego that have historic districts. And then you'd have to put yes, because that house cannot be altered in any way unless it's approved by the historic district. So a lot of times you will have that. So like this one I've had in Apple Valley a lot. Any water surcharges or penalties being imposed by a public or private water supplier. So in Apple Valley, you have Ranchos Water. So if they are a private company, they need to know that. If they don't know, they can put no, and then you could still explain home is in a private water district, unaware of any fee increases, that kind of thing. You can do that.
I have a question on that, because it does say about liens.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's say your client says that they know they owe money to somebody, okay? And they put on there that they don't have any liens.
Mhm.
Like you found out from title that they do. How do you approach that?
A lot of times people don't know that they have liens on their property. You don't generally, unless it's the IRS, you don't generally get notices from people. Well, you do, that's not true. I guess if you have a lien, let's say from Capital One, because Capital One is putting a lien on your home because you owe them money, they will send notices out. But if you don't receive them or you think it's junk mail, and let's say you genuinely threw it away and you have no idea there's an actual lien, that's what the prelim is for.
I'm referring to like trash, and they know they have.
Oh, like abatement and stuff?
No, it's just
Well, I mean, you can only ask questions up front with the disclosure. If she's not disclosing that she owes any money, then, I mean, that's, they're doing it to the best of their ability. You're not a detective, so you can't.
She told me she owed money.
Well, then so there's a fine line there. If the client is telling you something and you come across that question, then you need to have them say yes. So I will always tell my clients, go ahead and put yes on this because you did tell me that. Once you're aware, that's your integrity. So you want to make sure you say, okay, put yes on this and explain on there that you owe the city trash money, and so on. So yeah, I definitely recommend being transparent. This one's the TDS, which is the total disclosure statement. Very similar to the other one. This one, though, does ask whether or not the seller is occupying the property. So it is important because if they are not occupying the property and it is a rental or a second home, or family lives there, and this is to the best of their knowledge. So if they are unaware of certain things, even in the other document, there is a document called the exempt seller disclosure statement where you don't have to do these two, and it's only one. And that's more for like, this is in a trust, and mom and dad live there, and we've never lived there, so that you're exempt from that. So there's a document specifically for that. But if it is a rental or they've lived there, these two are important, okay? I'll show you guys that later. So this first page talks about what's in the home. So you can put that there's an oven, a microwave, dishwasher, burglar alarms, carbon monoxide, of course, should be there, smoke detectors, and so on and so forth. So you filled this portion out. One thing or a couple things that are always missed by agents is your water supply and your water heater. So because there's a bunch of little check marks, the seller always misses it, and the agents will generally miss that too. So your water supply, you always want to make sure you put whether it's gas or electric, your water heater. Water supply, whether it's city, well, or private. Your gas supply is always missed as well. And then the roof type is always missed too. So your roof type, you always want to put what it is, whether it's tile or it's composition or tar, whatever. Depending on the age of the home, you're still going to have tar roofs up here.
Now, on the water, when it says private, is that referring to places like Rancho?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep. Let's see, garage door openers, you want to know how many remotes they have. It's pretty detailed. But you want to make sure that you go over it with the seller before you leave that day, because if you miss something, then at least you can say, okay, well, let me have you fill it out now. The date that you see there on the top of page 2, right there, that is always missed. I would say 99% of the time it is missed. So this one's similar. So now this one does say substances, material, or products which may be environmental hazards such as, but not limited to, asbestos, formaldehyde, radon gas, lead-based paint, mold, fuel. So of course these are yes and no's that your seller needs to do. If there's any encroachments or easements in the property, have they done any structural modifications or alterations, repaired without necessary permits? Same question, but not in compliance with building codes. So you want to make sure you ask all of these questions. Is there any lawsuits? Is there any common area? This is important for either condos or homes that are in a common area that maybe they have a pool or whatever. Then that's important.
I have another question. It doesn't come up on this, but it comes up on KW.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked it up, I Googled it, but it'll say attached or detached, not referring to the garage, referring to the house. Detached is just a standalone house, and then attached would be like a condo, right, or an apartment type thing?
Depends, because if you're working on a mobile home or a manufactured home, attached could mean a foundation, or detached from a foundation. It probably is attached like common walls. Is there any common walls that you're sharing? That's probably what that is. But in a mobile home or a manufactured home, you can have that too, and that's called a 433. That's your foundation. Yeah. So, and that's why we do these, so we can go over these disclosures. All right. So we have opened escrow. You have those 3 documents already done. Your other disclosures are in here. What I recommend you do, well, first and foremost, your purchase contract actually has a stipulation based on how long you have to get these disclosures signed from the seller, okay? So I will show you that. in the residential purchase agreement. So,
Which is why you want it done ahead of time.
oops. Yeah, if you can have, honestly, if you can have all the disclosures done before you're in escrow, that's ultimately the goal. But if you cannot for whatever reason, then, it's understandable. So in my contract, let's see where I can find the actual page. There's an actual disclosure section, and I may have gone, yeah, maybe. No, it's not going to be on this page. It's going to be on 2, I think. Let's see. It's your appraisal contingency. So that's going to be part of your timelines too. You want to make sure that, so while I'm looking for this, because I should know where it
I know
is.
what you're looking for, 'cause I'm listening for it. Right there, right?
No, it's going to be, everybody on YouTube is going to be yelling, it's right there.
We just passed it.
I know, right?
Slow down. Because I know it'll say 17 days.
Okay, right here. Seller has 17 days after acceptance to disclose to buyer if the property is a condominium or located, now that's for your condo. Hold on. 3 days after acceptance for HOA. Nope, that's not what I want. I want my
I
disclosures.
start looking for it, and then I look at the date it was revised, because that's usually, that's old.
Okay, here it is. Seller has 7 days or X amount of days. So if the buyer wants, or if the agent wants, they can say has 3 days after acceptance or whatever to deliver to the buyer all reports, disclosures, and information for which the seller is responsible under paragraph 5, 6, and 7, 8B, 5, and so on and so forth. If the time specified seller has not delivered any such item, buyer, after first delivering to the seller a notice of seller to perform, may cancel this agreement. So you have 7 days to deliver that, okay? Now, on top of that, the buyer has 17 days after acceptance or unless otherwise agreed in writing to, this is for their physical inspection, okay? So it says applicable information which buyer receives from the seller and approve all matters. Now, there is another thing here that states that by the end of the time specified in paragraph 14B, which is their inspection period, the buyer shall deliver to the seller a removal for the applicable contingencies or cancellation. However, if the report, disclosures, or information for which the seller is responsible is not delivered within the time specified in 14A, which is 7 days, then the buyer has 5 days after delivery of any such items or time specified in paragraph B, whichever is later, to deliver to the seller removal of contingencies. So what that is saying is that if you don't deliver your disclosures within that first 7 days, the buyer then will have an additional 5 days to allow you to do that. If not, they can they can cancel or remove those contingencies. So that's important as well. And all that for that information. See, there you go. Okay. So your seller's affidavit of non-foreign status, this is for their California withholding for taxes. This one goes over whether they are an individual withholding, whether they have an individual withholding, or whether they are a corporation, partnership, limited liability company, trust, and estates transfer. This is for tax purposes, and generally, and then you also have a QS, which is the qualified substitute. That is another document that is included in your escrow as well. So that one can be done during your signing. You have a contingency removal, which will come at the end. So for now, we're going to go over the main disclosure. So you have your Megan's Law database disclosure. All of these are advisories. These are all disclosures that allow the buyer to know certain things. So like Megan's Law, it advises them that they can go on the Megan's Law website to see if public knowledge of their neighborhood that they're buying in. They can check on sex offenders and pedophiles, and anybody that's registered in the database will show up on that website. So that is a disclosure or a notice that lets them know that. Same thing, market condition advisory, very similar. It's an advisory that goes over market conditions, and it explains what that means, what it means to offer on a property, what it means to the seller to receive those offers. These are all advisories for the buyer.
What is the hazards one above?
Which one?
It's right there, 1 of 6, residential environment, that one, yeah, I've
This
never
one?
seen that.
This one is generally done later, but it is, so this goes over, or this is the actual guide for all hazards. So it goes over environmental hazards, earthquake hazards, flood hazards. It goes over things like asbestos. Yeah, so it goes over all of that. So let me see, where's that paper? Did I give you that paper that had let me see that really quick. Because the HID is, for your protection, get a home inspection. But that one, I believe, you only use that on FHA. Yeah, so this one is only used for FHA transactions. And it's just letting them know, because FHA just does have more guidelines. Because they have health and safety guidelines. So they require this document to let people know that they recommend that they get a home inspection for the property. But it's only for FHA. So we have market condition, all right, so once you have all of and then I wanted to go over really quick your exempt seller disclosure. So this one is only one page. So it's very similar to the seller's property questionnaire. The only difference is this one here has the same questions as the SPQ, but that's all it has. Because all of the repairs and alterations and all that other stuff, they're not going to know what mom and dad did before they passed away. So in this case, again, if you're selling a home that's in a trust and son or daughter or kids are selling the home, and this was mom and dad's house, they passed away and they inherited the house, this would be the form that you fill out for them. Okay. Any questions so far? And his name is still Stinky Pete.
Paul will send it to you, right?
What?
If you need that one, Paul will.
Yeah, so what I will do is I use Paula for my transactions. So depending on what it is, if I tell her, hey, this isn't a trust, she'll ask me, what kind of trust is it? Is it like husband died and wife is selling it? Because then she'll need the two. Or is it like, I'll tell her like these are kids, their parents passed away, and so then she'll load the correct form for me. And you use your TC as leverage. Not that you're using your TC, but the leverage is you allow the TC to do their job so that you can get more listings and you do more lead generation and do more open houses and so on and so forth. She actually does really help in this process. And
And you get your check.
and I get my check.
On time.
Yeah, and I'm very meticulous. So just so you guys know, like I go through I will try to get all my disclosures done at the time of listing because I want everything in. Because by the time the transaction closes, I want my check. I don't want to sit here and go, oh, I need 4 pieces of paper, and now my clients moved on and they don't want to sign them because then you're waiting for your check. So I'm super meticulous when it comes to paperwork, and even though she's my TC, I'm still involved. I still check with her. And one good practice during your escrow is generally about 2 weeks in, once the appraisal comes in, I'll go to her and I'll say, hey, is there anything left for me to sign before we close so that I know that we can get this thing done and settled. Receipt for reports. So during the transaction, you'll get a home inspection done, or the buyer side will get their home inspection done. If they ask for a termite inspection, you'll have that done. Your prelim will be done through title, which is right here as well. So what Paula will do for me is once she gets all the reports, she will put, let's say, wood destroying pests. So then she'll say, okay, you had a termite done. Let's say it was prepared by Rockwell, and it was on the 12th. Home inspection, let's say, was Housemasters. Oops, that's fine for this. And let's say they did it on the 4th. And then prelim was, let's say, First American, and let's say they did that on the 3rd. So what this is to solidify that those reports were done, and this goes to the buyer. So the buyer knows, hey, I've signed this document stating that I've received and I have done these reports. So that if they want to ask, oh, okay, I didn't see the termite, can I get a copy of the termite? Then they can get that. But this is to show that these were ordered and complete. That comes towards the end of the transaction. Let's see. So the biggest thing, huh? Yeah, so the biggest thing when you open escrow is your timelines. So you want to make sure that a couple things. You check the offer that was submitted to you, and let's say, for example, the offer, if it's not in the contract, you do not have to do it. So let's say it is an FHA buyer, but they did not ask for a termite. You do not have to do that termite. It's only if it's in the contract. It used to be that it was required for you to do a termite inspection, even though it wasn't in the contract. Now you do not have to do that. An HD is required. So on here it'll say it. So a lot of times they'll put septic, they'll click the septic box, or sometimes they will not. So I've seen it where they'll go into other terms and they'll say seller to pump and cert septic, but they don't have your actual SWPI, which is a document that asks for that in specific. Usually if you know that and you're using Paula, she'll ask for it. But if you don't know that, then you're not going to ask for it. But that document is your septic inspection. And what it asks for specifically is, if it is checked, septic inspection, I want the seller to pay for the inspection and report, the location, the pumping, and the certification. And generally, those are the only four that agents will click on. And then once the buyer signs it, then your seller can also sign it because it's part of the offer. That should come in as a part of that offer.
And on the well, which do you go for on that? Just certification?
What? Say that again?
That one has a well on it as well, right? The next one?
Yes. So if there is a well,
Certification?
yeah, it would be a certification. But that you would ask for a well cert in the offer. So what you would do, aside from here, what I would do is I would go into my purchase contract and I would go to other terms, which is right here, and I would ask for, what I would do here is I would ask for seller to provide a well cert. So generally an offer will have the NHD. Generally it'll say seller to pay for, and then it'll say termite, inspection, and section 1. So your section 1 is the actual repairs. So the actual repairs, section 1 means that it must be done in order for the loan to fund. That is a section 1 repair. Okay? That could be dry rot, it could be anything really. There are section 2s, but section 1 is generally what I ask for, because section 2s are, I haven't really seen section 2s. I've seen mostly section 1s up here. And then, so what I'll do here is I'll click on the septic well, and then I don't have to specify it in this section. I used to specify it here, and then I would include the document, but now I just check mark it, and I would have the document there. So whatever is on the offer, that's what your seller has to pay for, and you can counter things out. So let's say you get the offer, and a lot of people will check mark these 2 items. So these 2 items consist of retrofitting of a home. I always counter those out, because in most cases we don't have homes that, especially up here, because most of the homes that I sell anyways are built in 05, 04, even 1990s, even 80s. Retrofitting, so if I'm in LA somewhere and I'm selling a home that was built in 1919, then I would click these boxes, because it says seller shall pay for the cost of compliance with any other minimum mandatory government retrofit standards required as a condition of closing escrow. So a lot of times you'll have an older home, like something built in the 1900s, and they will need to retrofit something in order for escrow to close because it's not up to code. I always counter those out because here, if I'm selling a house built in '05, I don't need that. It's not going to come up.
So that doesn't refer to like the strapping and stuff? That's not what that's referring to?
No, well, it's referring to anything that needs to be retrofitted to bring your property up to code to close escrow. The straps, that would be something different because you're talking about a mobile being on a foundation. So, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Your straps,
That's different because they have to do that anyways for FHA for the appraisal. So that's your job. When you go to your listing appointment, like when I go to a listing appointment, I always check for FHA stuff. So I'll tell them, oh, you need a smoke detector in the hallway, or there's no carbon monoxide in the hallway, or hey, your water heater's not strapped. You need those to be braced and strapped. Correct. Yeah. Correctly. Yeah. Same thing here. So, like for example, let's say that. So a lot of times, what people will put is they'll ask for a home warranty up to $600, and they'll ask for it to include AC and upgraded. So in my counter offer, what I will do is I will counter and I will say seller to contribute up to and not to exceed $500. Any amount above and beyond that cost shall be paid by the buyer or buyer's agent. So there's certain things that I would counter out in an offer like that. What? Yeah, I would cover only up to 500, and then the buyer or agent can cover the rest. That's generally how that's generally how it works. Now, unless you present it to your seller and your seller goes, "I'll cover the extra 100," then that's fine. But in most cases, they won't do that. They know it's $500. So this class, I wanted to kind of go over the disclosures, but your initial escrow time frame that you want to worry about is your termite inspection. So if you have a termite inspection, you want to get that done within the first 3 days. And the reason why I say the first 3 days is because you want your clearance to come right away. A lot of people won't order the termite until after the appraisal, and I disagree with that. It's only $89, and if you get the inspection done, and let's say there is some rotting, and they find termites, and they don't want to get it done, then they don't want to get it done. Unfortunately, that they have to, but if they don't want to get it done, then you fall out. But it was only $89. Why not get it done right away? The septic, sometimes I will wait for the appraisal to come out, depending on when the appraisal is ordered. Generally, I like the appraisal ordered within the first 12 days, and I will ask the lender to do that. If it is, and I can get my appraisal done quickly, then I will wait to make sure that my home comes in at value before my seller spends $550 for a septic inspection. But the disclosures and the termite, I always say, if you can get them out within the first 3 days, that's your benefit on that timeline. For those of you that are new in the class, I do have a YouTube video going over transactions. So I used the whiteboard, and that video goes over the entire transaction and who is involved. So essentially on there, I started with escrow. So your escrow company is your middleman. Escrow is who handles the entire transaction. And then you have the title company, and then you have the buyer, the seller, the agents. I mean, there's a lot of people involved in this. There's a lot of pieces to a transaction. Your job is only to protect the seller or the buyer, depending on who you are representing. And generally, on the seller side, you will be involved with the escrow company naturally because you're controlling the transaction. You will be involved with title. If there are any prelim issues, liens on the property, that kind of thing, title will communicate that with you. You will deal with the appraiser because the appraiser will contact you for that appraisal. And you always want to show up for your appraisal. You always want to show up. Have your comps in hand. They may not take the comps, but at least you have them in hand. Appraisers are generally very welcoming of that because ultimately we're here to help each other out to perform one thing, and it is to sell homes or to sell property. So sometimes the appraisers, will not take your comps, and that's okay. They don't have to. But if they choose to, that's on them. and they don't have to use them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. As a seller, who else are we involved with? We could be involved with the home inspection company if they find something, if we have questions on the report. You will be involved with contractors if you have people in place to fix certain items. And then on the buyer side, you're involved with the lender on the seller side, depending on if you need to know where their specific timeline is, you can email. But that's why I always have a group email, because I always make sure everyone's on the same page. So if I have questions about a specific time frame on something, I will ask on that. And then I always, even if I'm only asking escrow, I will copy everyone, because I want to make sure they all get the same response. But for your beginning timeline, you're on your side, you want to make sure that your termite and your disclosures are turned in. Once your termite is clear, then you don't have to worry about it. Now the buyer can do their home inspection, and then you're just waiting for that appraisal call. That's your beginning stage of your escrow. I will generally, on a weekly basis, unless I feel that it's like that we're having issues, I'll do it on a bi-weekly or twice a week. But generally on a weekly basis, like on a Monday or on a Wednesday, I'll send an email to everybody and I'll ask what is the status of our escrow. That way, if there's something happening, I know about it, because I don't like waiting till the last minute to delay something. So if they need something from me, or an addendum or a paper or something signed, I expect that I'm being told that up front so that I can get it done right away. And I'm a same day kind of guy. I work off my phone, and if I need to, I will do it. If it's something quick, I'll get it done. If it's something that needs a little more time, then I'll tell them I'll get it done in the next 24 to 48 hours or whatever. But generally, I feel that you're never that busy to where you can't handle a quick form to get e-signed. There are agents out there that take 3 days to get one form signed, and I completely disagree with that, because I don't think, even if I have 11 house listings right now myself, 18 total listings with land, and I have two escrows, 2 more are going to be opening. That's going to be 4 deals. Even when I was busy at 10 deals open, I was never too busy to just send a form out. It's really not that serious. So.
Regarding appraisals, and this is from an experience point, because I know as a seller's agent versus buyers, you're going to handle it different. But I did go to an appraisal where I represented the buyer.
Okay.
The appraiser told me that what they were going to call out, and it was something that it was a condition that the FHA loan would not be approved unless it was fixed.
Okay.
So I contacted the seller's agent and I told them, we are going to do a request for repairs. So if we want to move quickly, let's get this fixed now, because I'm going to send it to you. I'm letting you know I'm going to send it. And he goes, well, let's just wait till the appraisal comes in. I go, she already told me she's going to do it. So I'm trying to get this taken care of immediately.
Right.
It took him 3 weeks to do it, and then of course we had to go through an extension because of the 3
Yeah.
week delay. But as a seller's agent, you don't want to tell them to start fixing things unless you know it's going to affect the loan. But how do you feel about that? If you know the appraiser's going to call it out.
Well, first and foremost, what I'm not comfortable with is the selling agent, which is the buyer's agent, going to the appraisal when I should be the one there because it's my listing. I'm not comfortable with that, because even though the appraisal sticks with the buyer, the appraisal is not for the seller, it is for the buyer, and it's not for either one of the agents. Me as the listing agent, I always meet the appraiser there because it is my listing. So I want to open up the house, I want to meet the appraiser, I want to speak to the appraiser, and if there's anything called out, I need to know so I can get it fixed. So I'm not comfortable with a selling agent going. That's why I always go to the appraisal. Now, if they want to be there with me, that's great. But I would never allow anybody to go without me there because it's my listing.
It was the other way
Okay.
around. The listing agent didn't want to be there.
Right, which is fine. That's their choice. That's their choice. There's really no rule as to who can and who cannot go. But I feel that I should be at every appraisal because it's my listing. I'm the one that comped it. I'm the one that listed it for the price I listed it for. So I want to make sure I'm there for that. Okay. Secondly, if I have repairs that need to be done, I just went through this. I had repairs that I needed to get done on a home. We got it done as quick as we could. Now, one of them was a fireplace, wood-burning stove, needed a glass replacement in the door. I was being told up to 2 months. Well, I wasn't going to do that. So I did find a glass company that could get it done in a day. And they ordered it. It was a $500 cost to my seller. But unless they got it done, they wouldn't be able to close on this loan because it's an FHA loan. There was some like exposed wood that needed painting and other things, but we got it done. Like I went yesterday and I met the appraiser yesterday, and there were a couple things that were still showing some raw wood. So I said, well, I'll paint it right now. Painted it, and he took a picture, and it was done. You know, as long as you work together, there's really no need for, I call dramatics in real estate. I mean, real estate's not that hard. So like to your point, it shouldn't take 3 weeks for me to get something done. If I want to sell the house, ultimately we're in business to sell the house to clients, and we're in business to work together. So why am I taking 3 weeks to get something repaired that maybe can take a week? Unless it's something like I do have a client I'm working with that's on a contingency, and on their home in Hesperia, they have to get the septic line. The septic failed, so instead of doing the septic again, the city is actually requiring them to connect their home to sewer now because the sewer is like less than 200 feet away. So in Hesperia, so that can take, they told me, up to like 2 or 3 months because it takes time to do that work. So that's understandable, but they're trying to expedite it to get it done like ASAP. So those things are understandable, but if you have something that needs painting and you shouldn't take 3 weeks to get that done.
Just curious, where's it at in Hesperia?
I want to say by the Mesa. I'm not sure.
Because I know they did it in Apple Valley, and I'm just trying to.
Yeah, Apple Valley is one that's doing that. So, do we have any questions? Timelines, inspections, disclosures. Any questions of that? I'm going to do a disclosure class, hopefully with Paula, so we can actually talk about how to go over each disclosure when you sign it with your buyer or with your seller. They're not difficult. There's just a lot of information in them that you need to know how to explain them and how to go over them. But this was more on the escrow side of things. Let's see if I have my. I'll show you guys after the class. Questions?
Just stay on top of it.
Concerns? Emotional outbursts? Comments?
On the seller property questionnaire,
Uh-huh.
that's what the seller fills out, we don't help him fill it out?
Correct. Seller property questionnaire and total disclosure statement. The total disclosure statement is the one that had what was in the home. So that one had like the.
So do we help them fill that one out?
You could, like for example, on this one, on the first page, let's say they look at it and they say, what's a trash compactor? And you can say, no, you don't have a trash compactor. Right. Or you could say, oh, you have a dishwasher. Oh, you have rain gutters outside. Oh, you have a burglar alarm. And you can help them in that sense. But
not the seller property question.
I would not recommend that. No, I would recommend the seller does that because again, if they had, let's say, a water leak and let's say a pipe burst in their wall, and you help them with that and you tell them, oh no, but they know that they had a pipe burst and you told them to put no on that, now your license is in jeopardy. So I don't ever recommend that. I always recommend you let them fill it out.
So do you have a YouTube video on how to fill out a contract? Because I don't even know how to fill out a contract.
On a contract, I don't, but we can go over that right now. A listing contract?
Yeah.
Oh, we could do that right now. You want to do that now? We have time. Yeah, we have time. Okay. For this video, it is over. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe, comment, and check out my video for Transaction 101 and on who is involved. Also, 5 key successes to being successful in real estate. Go check it out. Talk to you soon. Love you all. Bye-bye.